Dzień dobry Państwu. Chciałbym Państwa serdecznie przywitać na debacie pod tytułem Świat bez granic, organizowanej przez Fundację Krzyżowa, Fundację Konrada Adenauera w Polsce oraz Ewangelicalną Wyższą Szkołę Teologiczną. W dniu dzisiejszym będziemy prowadzić spotkanie w sposób może mniej codzienny dla spotkań organizowanych przez Fundację Krzyżowa, mianowicie całe spotkanie odbywa się w języku angielskim, dlatego też serdecznie zapraszam Państwa do skorzystania opcji tłumaczenia. Na dole ekranu znajdą Państwo ikonę interpretacja, tłumaczenie. Tam proszę wybrać wersję językową polski. Spotkanie jest symultanicznie tłumaczone na ten język. Ci z Państwa, którzy dołączyli do nas przez Facebooka, w opisie spotkania jest link do kanału Zoom. Proszę się połączyć na Zoomie, tam też Państwo mogą uzyskać polską ścieżkę dźwiękową dla tego spotkania. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome you to the debate The World with No Borders, organized by the Krzyżowa Foundation for Mutual Understanding in Europe, the Konrad Adenauer Foundation in Poland, and the Evangelical School of Theology. I am very pleased that you found the time to be here with us, especially as for some of us it is already evening, and for others it's the beginning of the day. My name is Tomasz Konieczny, and on behalf of Foundation Krzyżowa, I would like to warm welcome all our guests. I'm really very pleased that you are willing to meet with us. I hope that it will be an extremely interesting and inspiring debate. I would also like to welcome Mr. Daniel Lehmann from the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung, to whom I now give the floor.
Thank you, Tomek. Ladies and gentlemen, also on behalf of the Konrad Adenauer Foundation in Poland, I would like to extend a warm welcome to you to today's debate. We're actually happy to support this event. As you know, it is part of a cycle of events that we are holding this year for the second time together with the Krzyżowa Foundation, and which we plan to continue next year. Our goal is still to create a space for meeting and exchanging experiences and ideas of an international circle of experts committed to promoting a constructive dialogue based on mutual respect, which is an attempt to counteract the growing polarization of society. All too often we get lost in this polarizing debates of everyday political and social life. Too often we muddle along from one current event to another without any real guide as where we are headed. It is at this point that we must occasionally break free from this constricting daily routine and its current problems. We have to take a step back and try to look at the bigger picture. And then we need to ask ourselves what long-term goal we want to head for. So let us use this discussion to pause and turn to the question of what might await us in the future and where we want to go from here. Of course, such a question can only be approached from different perspectives, which is why we are pleased that we have succeeded in attracting panelists from such diverse fields. On this basis, I wish us an exciting discussion and thank both the panelists and the audience for their presence and participation. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Daniel. And now the floor will be given to Professor Wojciech Szczerba, to whom I entrust the moderation of this meeting. But before that, I would like to remind that our meeting is interpreted into Polish, and the participants are waiting for your questions, which you can ask via the chat function of the Zoom communicator. We will follow up the questions and ensure that they are addressed to our guest at the end of the meeting. Wojtku, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Wojciech Szczerba. I'm a rector of Evangelical School of Theology in Wrocław. And on behalf of the organizers, I would like to welcome every person to our today's debate, The World with No Borders. And especially, I would like to thank our esteemed guests for accepting our invitation. And let me introduce them. Dr. Edgardo Colón-Emeric is with us. Right now, he's in Texas. He is a renowned American theologian, author of many books and articles that are devoted mainly to theology of dialogue and reconciliation. He's the head of the Center for Reconciliation and the academic dean of the Divinity School at Duke University in the USA. Thank you very much for being with us. I would also like to introduce Director Leszek, who's a good friend and head of the Regional Bureau of the European Parliament in Poland. Welcome. And Dr. Joachim Klose, a national representative and the director of the Forum of Political Education of Saxony in the Konrad Adenauer Foundation. Thank you again. I'm looking forward to our conversation. And I have to say, you are very brave. I will try to lead our conversation in a fair and best possible way. However, as you all know, such conversations tend to live their own life. So Dr. Tomasz Konieczny from Krzyżowa Foundation will co-lead with me this debate, and I'm sure he will straighten up all my prejudices and heresies and will help us with the open questions at the end of our debate. Let me say a few words about the reasons for our conversation. I remember talking to Dr. Konieczny, and he is really the culprit of this situation several weeks ago, and he expressed the idea of the debate on the state of the current world. And first, I was a bit skeptical. There has been so many of such debates, but then I thought of the paradoxes we live in our current world. So on the one hand, we cross so many traditional borders and limitations. I mean, we can organize a meeting like this one across several continents or countries within a few hours. We live much longer than our predecessors. And women are finally ordained even in Polish, very conservative Lutheran churches, which means that miracles happen. So there are many borders and many limitations that do not longer exist. But on the other hand, well, there is the pandemic, which separates us physically from each other. The economic inequalities in the world are bigger than even before. We see racism and nationalism growing again in many parts of the world. So there are many walls in our current world that are yet to be overcome. So we live in the world of paradoxes, which makes it beautiful and scary in the same time. And what can we do about it? How to understand that? So this was the beginning of the idea to talk about our world with and without borders. So thank you again for accepting the invitation. And let me start with a simple question. Well, actually not. Let me change a little bit the traditional routine. When I'm preparing the interviews and debates, I often consult my thoughts with my kids. And they tend to be quite critical of my ideas, which I think it's okay. Sometimes, well, what I think is creative and new, they really label with no hesitation as old-fashioned and dull. So this time, I actually asked my daughter, Tosia, to start this conversation with her question. And I hope you don't mind. So here she is. Let me move aside for a moment. And Tosia, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. My name is Tosia. I'm 16 years old and I'm currently in the 3rd grade of high school. So I guess I'm an average teenage girl entering this whole weird adult world. And I'm not really sure how to find myself in it yet. I ask myself a lot what is going on around, and I have to say I am a bit anxious about the future, but I'm sitting here and looking at you. You all represent important institutions, you get along in life, you all are well educated, you understand the past and the present. Yet, to be honest, for me, you somehow embody the world which is about to fall apart. So I would like to ask you if you could tell me just in a few sentences, what is going on in here? Is it really the best possible world? And what legacy is your generation leaving to the young people like me? So we can start with maybe Leszek.
Okay, thank you very much, Tosia. I would like to say hello to all the noble participants of this discussion. I'm really honored to be there, and thank you very much for this really insightful question. Let me start from one of the most famous quotes from pop culture, music and songs. I'm pretty sure that you also have heard this quote is the Rolling Stones song, "I can get no satisfaction." And this is all about the current society to me. Either in Europe or in the entire Western world, not only, because we already kind of experienced this melting of those definitions of what is the Western world, what is this non-Western world. And I must say that I pretty much like this, what you just said at the end of your introduction, that this world it's close to fall apart, is going to fall apart. This is something that you can see. I'm not sure if all of us, all of the people in this world could see this as well. Let me first say something really positive. What I believe we are living in one of the most beautiful periods of time of our history, especially thanks to the science. The scientific achievements of nowadays are brilliant. But unfortunately, when I compare that with the past, with my past, like some 30 years ago, there was much more about the science on the news, and people seem to be more excited about scientific achievements, about all those breakthrough inventions that we could enjoy. Right now we are waiting for yet another important event, the 18th of December. The new James Webb telescope will be launched into space, and what we can expect is a really breakthrough moment in the exploration of space. The recent pandemic shows how excellently we can cope with the challenges of the modern world. Thanks to the scientific progress, we manage as humanity, as people, to get the vaccine for this deadly COVID pandemics in around less than 6 months, and we saved millions of lives thanks to the science. But still, when we look at the statistics again, it seems everything is much better than it used to be. People live longer. This is what your dad already mentions. There is more equality. The section gaps are narrower than they used to be like this 30 years ago. We even have this famous book by Hans Rosling, Factfulness, about all those positive statistics that teach us how wonderful this world around us may be, compared to what our parents, for example, used to live in. Education levels are higher. Poverty has been almost eradicated to compared with the world of like a mid-century, mid-20th century. But somehow, as a society, and I'm not saying only after this gloomy pandemic period, we can get no satisfaction out of that. We are sad. We are feeling this certain heavy burden of, I don't know, guilt or responsibility for the future. And that's good, because we are worried about, for example, the environment, what kind of natural environment would we be able to leave to our children. But I'm afraid there is one and the most important factor here that blocks us as a people, as a humankind, to enjoy what we achieved, because we excel in science, in many other areas, but we really fail in like self-organization. Well, we name it the politics, and this is a paradox, because everything right now is political. We are really polarized on every single subject that you can possibly touch. But on the other hand, when you ask your peers, your colleagues, from your friends from school, they will say like, yeah, politics is a nasty word. It's a word that nobody wants to adhere to. Nobody wants to be associated with the politics. Like yesterday, we had this event in organized by our office, and the co-organizers asked us to erase the word politics from the poster, because they didn't like the word. They wanted to remain apolitical. Then I think that the way that we organize ourselves does not reflect what we can possibly achieve. We are still living in the old systems. We are victims. Our societies are victims of outdated forms of political organization. We are trapped in the realms of old ideas, like 19th century nation states and all these states with their borders around. And very often we mention this reptilian brain that aggressive and very like really guarding the space that leads, has been leading nations and generations to wars, and somehow we lived through so many different events, like 2 massive wars. We have all these ideas, all the knowledge, all the science, but somehow this political discourse, this social discourse, the way that we are organized is really outdated. And here is the problem, I think, because people unite, people do magnificent things together, but they would like to unite around actions, not around words, because they feel that we lack metaphors, we lack meaningful words, we lack meaningful ideas right now. So let's do something instead of talking, because this talking is really void, and just acta non verba, do something, go to action. And right now I'm really worried if we will be able to learn much from the pandemics. I would love to know that as a humanity, as a humankind, we will take more from the pandemics that the pandemics could possibly take from us, and we learn, we pass this border, and we become more modern in a way. We will embark on a modern model of organization of our society. But for that, we need courage, we need bravery, and we have to really do this first step. So I really believe that as a humankind, we will succeed in passing into the new generation, into the new phase.
Yeah, thank you. So maybe could someone else? So maybe Edgardo, could you tell me now?
Thank you, and greetings to all of you. First, a word from my context. I'm not in a European context. I am in the context of the Americas, which is more than the United States. And it's and that can sometimes be a collapse of the term America to the United States, but for many of us who have come from Latin America, we speak of the Americas to refer to the hemisphere and to the complicated history and diverse peoples of the hemisphere. And to this question, is this really the best possible world? A great chorus of cries from the poor, the young, and the earth would say, no, it is not the world that we want to be in and that we believe we should be in. And I would like to reframe the question too, to say, what is the world for? And that the world is not simply a static reality. As a Christian or as a person of faith, I believe it has purpose, and that then for us who inhabit this world, purpose within that purpose. And so when it comes to thinking about legacy that I'm leaving, I think I approach this question as a father with children and as an educator with students. And I hope to leave behind dreamers who dream dreams of a better world. We are talking of borders in the world with no borders and borders. And I hope that the work that I am doing through the institutions that I serve, that we are forming people who dream of more than living apart. Living where we avoid each other, where we are afraid of each other, where we build borders to protect ourselves from each other. The same, I hope that we form people who dream of more than living side by side, where we are only looking to coexist, to put up with each other. What I hope is that we're forming people who dream dreams of living together, and where we encounter each other as neighbors without borders, members of one common household that is multi-generational, multi-ethnic, multi-religious. And in that sense, is forming dreamers of reconciliation, who look to borders as places of encounter, not exclusion, places where we build bridges, not walls. And in that sense, it's really the legacy is the formation of dreamers of a new we, a new us. And that is what I hope.
Thank you very much. I think it is really important what you just said. It's a bit comforting and a bit scary, and I need to think about it a lot. And maybe now, Joachim, could you tell me? Oh, I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Thank you for the invitation to this discussion. The question about the best possible world stems from Leibniz, who asked himself why Godfather didn't create a better world as this is. And he said he already created the best world he could. And it is our freedom to improve the world. And so yesterday evening, I had a discussion with the Ministry of Environment, the first one in the Federal Republic, Klaus Töpfer. And I asked him concerning the climate change, what could we do if we look at the climate change? What could Germany do? We are only 2% of the world economics. And he says, these 2% of the world economics are very important because we can give a good example for the world. And he puts the finger on the point and says that the result of the climate discussion in Germany shows that alternative energy production is efficient, and then we could produce alternative energy worldwide without coal and oil and other stuff. This is very important. So if you think about borders and borderlines, these are almost borders and borderlines in our heads. First of all, we have to confess that there are no absolute boundaries in the world at all. They exist only in our mind. If you would have looked at the dictionary of the brother Grimm's, who analyzed the words, he said border defines border as the imaginary line used to separate areas of the Earth's surface. So if you speak about borders, they are rather the result of cartography as natural given. But all surfaces in nature and boundaries of objects are rather semi-open, osmotical. On these surfaces take place an exchange like absorption of or emitting of electrons, energy, and so on. We are also not only our body and stop at the surface of our skin. Helmut Plessner, another philosopher, speaks in this context of the eccentric positionality of the human being. In German language, there's only the term Grenze. This is a narrowing. In English, there is a multitude of terms that clarify the phenomenon, and borders exist not only in space. The second point which I want to make concerning our theme and about concerning the anxious, how we construct the future world. When one draws borders, one has an interest in which we have to talk about. One makes a distinction between inside and outside, one's own and foreign. Spencer Brown's laws of form start with the sentence, draw a distinction. If one has made a distinction, where are consequences, and one is responsible for the one or the other side and defends one's own. And the differences can be many, like the material, the private property, or cultural and political, defends the territory, protects the people, welfare, or the religious. Do we have one worldview, one understanding of the world? But as we have already discussed, globalization dissolves border. The economic is worldwide, the communication is worldwide, and the virus acts worldwide too. The third point which I want to make at the beginning is that we cannot live without limitations. We cannot live without borders. This seems to be a paradoxical. If everything in our surrounding were the same, we would not come to any action. Democracy theory knows that one requires a deficit to become creative. If we would live indefinitely long, we would not be motivated to start anything at all. We could always do one thing or another later. Since we cannot take the divine perspective and know or realize everything, we need a manageable space that gives us support and orientation. We need, in a certain way, a home to be able to be creative. In the last couple of years, I discussed this concept of Heimat. Heimat means homeland or being at home, or in Russian, Rodina. It means the ground which you stay on. And I found out that there are three different perspectives which we should discuss. The first perspective are the places. Our home has open edges, but no borders. So if we leave our home and go away, we realize that we cannot understand each other, that people speak another language, which we come in another region, and there are other customs and other people. The second one, the temporal one, is aspect of Heimat is we need common narratives, which gives us sense in order to manage the tasks of the future. This could be a shared common religion. It could be also a future picture of our world, but we have to exchange these future picture, have to discuss it and have to bring it in our discussion to come into a doing with each other. And the third point, and the last point, is the social means. This is that Heimat is, socially, Heimat keeps us together, the people who live together and share their life perspective. And the places, the narratives, and the social room constitute our homeland, our Heimat. And we start with this point of view, and then we go into other regions and try to work together. And every kind of border which we set up by mind destroys Heimat. And that's why I'm thinking we don't need these absolute borderlines which we find in politics. We need kind of edges which we can overcome, and that we can exchange, and that we can create our common future, I would say. That's why we discuss today, and I hope we come to a good result. Thank you at the beginning.
Thank you. I think that a lot of young people like me ask themselves the same questions. And I think it is really important for them to get the kind of ideas that I just did. And I wish that all adults would think this way and live according to it. So thank you again.
So thank you very much. This was wonderful. This could be actually the end of our discussion. I'm not sure if I can add anything wiser to what my daughter just said. Well, now let's follow up your statements. And you referred to future, also past, present, and past. And let's stick for a moment with the future. So let's imagine that we meet here again in 10 or 20 years. The pandemic is over. We're all happy, rich, healthy, and handsome, just as we are now. Or maybe not. Maybe the world is crashing and we are barely kicking. So what do you think, how the world is going to look like? What kind of challenges we may face? And precisely, I would like to ask each of you about a certain aspect of the future. So, I'll start with Joachim. You're an expert in political education. And we see various types of populism and nationalism growing in Europe. And I'm thinking particularly of Germany and Poland, but also other countries in Central Europe. So what do you think, how this situation will develop in the future? How will it affect our continent?
This is not an easy question. I would wish that it would be like a bunch of flower, that we have different countries, different subsidiary structures who are working together in one unit, and that they come together to build up a common future. But if you look at the pandemic situation now, where we see some gaps between societies in the even if you look only in the Western societies in Europe, you see a difference between Portugal and Spain and Italy concerning the opposition against the vaccination. There you have only 2.5% oppositioners against the vaccination at all. In Germany, especially in Saxony and in southern Germany, you have 30%. And the politics are asking themselves, why is this the case? Why do 30% of the people refuse the vaccination? And they had two answers, and this is important now, that's why I'm bringing it up. The first answer was that they said it's a federalism in the German states. So the federalism is always a tension between the federal state and the lower national states, which are in a certain way work together, and the lower national states always work against the federal states, like the Saxony people work against the Federal Republic and its Bavarian and the other people too. That's why they are skeptical against the federal state. I could transpone it to the European level. I could say all these states are not working together. They work against the European structure, and the European structure overtakes more and more responsibility and dominates the federal states, which I think is a wrong way. In a certain way, we have to work together in a subsidiary way of life. The second point, which we brought in the discussion of the vaccination, was that in the southern Germany, we have the anthroposophical movement. The anthroposophical movement is founded by Rudolf Steiner, and they treat sickness or illness as given by God, so that's you have to survive it, and it makes you stronger if you survive it. And the natural sciences, they are more or less a little bit skeptical. This means that we don't have the common worldview. We don't have the same understanding of the worldview. And this brings us in opposition to natural sciences. And then I would add a third point of view, which makes it difficult to come together. And I'm speaking only about Germany. This is the scientific atheism of the Eastern German countries. In the communist time, the natural sciences are be treated as without alternatives. So you have to believe the natural sciences, and the people wanted to build an opposition against the natural sciences. Thomas Bauer, a philosopher from Münster, says we have to be tolerant against different point of views. He said in Germany, Ambiguitätstoleranz. And we are not this kind of tolerance against other positions. And this makes it difficult to build up a common opinion, to create a common future. That's why I'm thinking, if I look 10 years into the future, that we have to find a way. How do we handle the European level, and how do we react from the federal level to the European level and backwards, and how do we react as neighbors? As long as we build up in mind an iron curtain between Eastern Europe and Western Europe, and if we don't bring up an understanding of a different situation in the countries, we can't create a common future. And that's why I'm very interested to discuss with our neighbors these questions. That's why I'm also participating in this discussion.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I appreciate it very much. And actually, I would like to move now to Leszek and follow it up. Well, Leszek, let me ask a straightforward question: will the EU survive? Or let me refer to the opinion, or to the perspective of Günther Verheugen just a few days ago. How much the EU has to evolve to be effective and adequate in the future, in the dynamically changing reality?
Yes, I'm feeling pretty safe right now to start answering your question, because the answer is set in the future. So many different scenarios could happen in the future. So I have this poetical license to fantasize about the future to come. I mean, depending on the interval we were talking about, like you said, 10 or 20 years. Okay, so let me first come back to the past. I've been working for the European Union, for the European Parliament for more than 15 years, and ever since, I remember already some 6 or 7 good cases of the end of the European Union. So at least that was this heralded by the press, by the media. The first one was when the French and Dutch, they rejected the constitution in the referendum. That was the first ever end of the European Union, as the one I remember. That's been before Poland joined in 2004 in the troubled past of the European Union or European community. There are many other ends to it. But then what was then a Lisbon Treaty? Lisbon Treaty also has been rejected in the referendum in Ireland, and that was again the end of the European Union. And then this Eurozone crisis, the Greek crisis, 2008, and then the big crisis then right after, another end of the European Union. And there were some periodicals like The Economist I could see that like week by week that they were featuring the cover stories, and for months, and every single week that was a cover story dedicated to the end of the European Union. So like this so bad and self-fulfilling prophecies that somehow they could never fulfill. And then of course the biggest blow was Brexit, and then the pandemics, and then we will probably see in the future, in the coming years, another reason for which the European Union should be already dead and non-existing. And in my kind of mediatic career, just what I've been doing for pretty many years, I was telling people about the European Union, how it works, and what it is in fact. One of my favorite metaphors was the one of a project. And I was always saying, like, the European Union is not cast in metal, or is not set in stone. Is a project, and deeper behind the project there is an idea, and that there is a set of ideas, and not necessarily a uniform idea. And that's great in this talking about the projects. It's not the one, at least from the very beginning, from the birth of the European project, as we know, like back in the 50s, we have at least two main points of view. The one by Spinelli, more like to the left, and is more federalistic, and the one by Schumann, and then many others on the way. And we had this conversation before, Wojciech, if I remember, about this. This is sort of a paradox that when Poland and 9 other countries joined the EU back in 2004, there was this EU 15. And right after it was the EU 25, the 1st of May 2004. So we've been joining or preparing to join a EU that never existed for us after we joined, because the moment we joined, there was this threshold, this border that we crossed, and by joining the EU, we turned it, we completely changed it, and it was as a completely different entity. So the project evolves. And there is one thread. So I'm kind of calm about this future or longevity of the European Union. I believe that it will thrive. It will remain under the flag and in the shape. Well, still we will be able to recognize that we are talking about the European Union as such, but of course it may evolve. And then now the questions, we have to ask ourselves several questions. And how? Because what I believe, what I do not exclude, and this is probably the most scary perspective, is that what we have in place is a super powerful tool, is a super efficient administration, contrary to the propaganda and popular belief. And I say, like, extremely well-oiled mechanism that has been serving this European unity for more than 50 years. And be careful, because this in this worst case scenario could somehow be hijacked and intercepted by the bad guys in a way. When we think of, for example, the border in this, like, physical border of the EU, defending the border between the EU and the rest of the world, that's this famous or infamous concept of Fortress Europe, right? So we can think of it, of course, as this realpolitik of how the politicians in the EU would see that yes, we have to prevent the migrants from entering our territory, once because we have to show this sovereignty of protecting the area of the land of the European Union. But secondly, we still have this lesson, this bitter lesson that we learned back in 2015, 2016, when this anti-migrant threat has been politicized by the extreme, by the far right. So in this center stream mainstream politicians right now, that they would prevent this movement, not to give another fuel and this fear mongering capabilities to the far right again. But what I believe, and I'm an optimist myself, and also I have to confess in here, I'm a federalist, which is maybe not a universal stance in my country, in Poland. But when you can look at these processes in the EU and the consciousness, well, still there is this opposition between this local identities and the cosmopolitan federalistic model. And I think when you analyze the metaphors and the way people talk about the EU and the way people in Europe talk about the world, about their existence in the world, this is happening already. Maybe it's not so very well visible from this Polish perspective, biased with the current political and mediatic landscape, I would say, but it is happening already as this kind of like, well, name it historical process. And definitely what I believe in 10 years or 20 years, the EU will be more federal, because this is the way it goes. This has been the way it through all the new treaties. There is more power being given to the European Parliament, more democratic willpower was taken from the member states to this federal governance, or this communitarian unions governance, and this will be happening. Of course, we have to really listen carefully to the people and look at their reactions, not to overdo, we must not try to speed up this process, because it has to be evolutionary, and it is, and it works. So this is how I see the European Union in the future. Definitely more federal, and definitely existing entity.
Thank you very much for this optimism and this reference to this organic development of European Union. I think it's very important, and I think I would like now to move to the American side. Edgardo, let's move to the. It is connected. Let's move to the ethnic issues as well. It has been more than 1.5 years since the death of George Floyd and the movement Black Lives Matter, and it has been more than a year since the election of President Joe Biden. And do you see any changes in American society since then? And referring to what we said before, which direction is America going on its democratic way? How do you see that?
Well, first, I'd want to again broaden the lens, widen the view, because in my work, I'm also always, as I said, connected with the Latin American context, and seeing all of these actually are part of the same story. They are part of the same story of the European expansion across the Atlantic and the transatlantic slave trade, the oppression of indigenous people. So it's all one big story. And I think that the focus on only the US side of it is understandable because of the power of the United States across the world through economic and cultural power. And at the same time, I think that the resolution to some of these questions is very much tied to a hemispheric reality. The second point, that kind of prolegomena that I'd like to make is that for me also the way for the future to become the dreams for a better future need to be dreamed not only by those of us who are in positions of privilege and power, but actually very much more with the people who have been excluded because they have perspectives that are missing from from those of us who are in positions of power, precisely because they have borne the brunt of the exclusion and the injustices. And so that means in the United States, attending to very much to the first voices and privileging the voices of Black, Brown, Indigenous peoples, minoritized communities. And that is also the case in the Americas context as well, of attending to those voices. And what are those voices saying is that, well, that we pay attention to moments like George Floyd, and they are moments that are apocalyptic, in that they open doors, windows, disclose realities that are present all along, that have been with us and are very intractable, and that the history of these lands in the Americas is one that is a history of exclusion, a history of systemic inequalities, a history of violence, and that the hope the hope and lament here go very closely hand in hand. That the protests, the moments of protest over Black Lives Matter, are a moment of hope, in that there is a greater awareness for some people who were unaware, whether intentionally or just through their formation, of what the reality was for so many people of color in these lands, of that awareness. But then at the same time, there is a retrenchment, a reaction against that awareness, and that reaction is very strong. And there is a sense in people are asking questions that they weren't asking haven't asked for a long time. Questions like, is a new civil war in the United States imaginable? That is what seemed like a hypothetical. It still seems far-fetched, but it's plausible, imaginable. I'd say also too that again, in the broader American landscape, the Americas, that we find ourselves in moments of repetition, of problems that were apparently left behind, the civil wars, the dictatorships, or the Cold War era are again resurfacing, reliving these moments, and that is cause for lament, and that lament is important in order to also understand the realities and the possibilities for a new, better future. But what I want to emphasize, kind of in closing with, in terms of these, is that I see for us, in a sense, two alternatives here. We either move in the way of a genuine radical reconciliation that transforms the exclusions in our context in ways that allow for the birth of a new a new community, or we will be repeating the histories and the pedagogies of exclusion and oppression and marginalization that have characterized so much of the story of the peoples in these lands. And so I think that there is, in that sense, a choice for us, and you have many people who are working to pave the way in both directions. Both paths are being built, and so that's what I see from the context of the Americas.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. I think in your voice, but also in Leszek and Joachim, I can see can hear the dialectic of exclusion and inclusion, and it somehow plays together. And let me refer now to a report of United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. It was published just a few months ago, and it refers to 2020. And it says that in 2020, there was something like more than 82 million forcefully displaced people. And in comparison to 2018, when we are talking about the peak of the migration crisis, then there was 65 million forcefully displaced people. And in 2011, there was 39 million people. So we see really that the numbers are, well, growing. And out of those more than 82 million people, about 50% are under 18 years of age, and more than 50% are women. And when we read the report that was prepared by World Bank, they say that, well, we may expect that by 2050, there might be something like 216 millions of so-called climate refugees. And I have to say that these numbers are huge, are overwhelming, are beyond at least my imagination. But at this point, at this very moment, there are hundreds, or maybe a few thousand, but hundreds of migrants on the border of Poland and Belarus. And regardless of the complicated political aspect of the situation, well, I have to say, it is really heartbreaking to see children and women and seniors just suffering in the cold weather, no food, no warm clothes, no medications, and almost every day soldiers find dead bodies in the woods. It is really sad. So when we think of the future, inclusion, exclusion, possible scenarios, and when we look at it from the angle of forced displacements, migrations, is there a way to prevent it? And if not, how can we prepare ourselves for the inevitable future? Or referring to what Tosia said earlier, how can we prepare our children? Perhaps they will have to leave their houses. So how would you react to that, Leszek, from the European Union perspective?
Yes, well, migration itself as a phenomenon has been in our civilization from the very beginning. We didn't call it migration back then, before the invention of borders, that what Joachim was mentioning, that it's just a relative and an abstract concept. The migrants, that they were probably called nomads or travelers or whatever, they became migrants the moment that they had to cross one border, leaving their country. I'm just thinking of this article, possessive article. What does it mean? My country, their country. What is the way that the countries belong to us, or we belong to the countries? And then they had to cross another border to the new country, or the host country. So yeah, we had many different forms of displaced people, and then here it's very important to come back to this basic concept that has been on many occasions being elucidated by the United Nations, by the wise people who are in charge of migration, that to differentiate between asylum seekers, refugees, and migrants, and economic migrants. We have a number of international legal conventions. That there is this 1951 convention that protects refugees or asylum seekers. We have the right international, the Convention of Human Rights, United Nations. It's Article 14. We have this sacred right to asylum. It's not crossing the state border to seek asylum. It's not a crime. It's a human right. It's a basic human right, and we have to be super clear whenever we talk about migration. We have to be super clear of this distinction, and we can then sort of academically think of a different moments and the places when the definitions would somehow blur or overlap. Migrants, asylum seekers, and right now in this official language talking about migrations and refugees. We perceive that there are very often like a mixed groups, because and this is used adversely by the anti-migrant propaganda. You could see that clearly in Poland, that oh, these are not refugees, these are migrants, and we always say why, because what's the definition of a refugee in here? It's a person that due to many factors, and they are named like the race, religion, whatever, skin color, origin, ethnical status, or whatever, cannot count or is not able or cannot count on the protection from their state of origin. So and then since the entire world is divided into states, this person, the refugee, has to seek the protection in another country. We talk about the situations of wars and different disasters, and right now they come at the border of, let's say, Poland, and among them there are people from Syria or Iraq, and people from other countries. We have different lists of those countries from which those people could be called refugees, because the status of the affairs in the country is a fallen state, or there's a state of war, or there's a persecution and of a certain groups in the country, and we can call them refugees, and the others are migrants. And then right, there's an ethical question how we as representatives of those rich and sad and relatively happy nations of the Western world with a belly full, sitting in a warm home, when would we place this line, this border between the economic migrant and an asylum seeker? What is the level of malnutrition or poverty that puts the human being at the brink of this life threat that we can now, from the moment we can call him or her a refugee, or shall we still call them migrants, economic migrants, and point on the internet that they are holding mobile phones or wearing like allegedly expensive clothes, and they are not that poor as it is. So you were asking about like the official measures that the EU is applying. Yes, we have two agencies that in the European Union that are responsible for the issues linked to the migration and asylum. Is the asylum agency in Malta and Frontex border protection agency in Warsaw in Poland. So this migration policy still remains strongly within the member states, although due to the Schengen area regime, so visa-free travel, there is a number of arrangements, and there's a growing number of arrangements and like common visa policy, and then a common border policy is being is in the making right now in the European Union. Of course, when you look at the reaction of, for example, Polish authorities on this crisis, you can clearly see that or sense that there is this struggle for a symbolic monopoly to guard the border, because it happens so that the external border of the Polish border, the eastern Polish border, is at the same time the external border of the EU. And you can clearly see that the government of Poland refusing help during this Belarusian crisis, refusing help from official help from the European Union. They would like to display that they themselves they capable of fulfilling this statutory condition of the existence of the sovereign state, meaning the prevented borders. But the same narrative you can find right now on the EU level, which is this kind of paradoxical sub-product or byproduct of federalism, that whenever this federal governance would spread over the entire territory of the European Union, it reaches the external border, and it poses the question of guarding the border, so keeping the territorial cohesion of the area that is being governed, which again is as a school book of politics. Yeah, the matter is really complex. Just to
thank you.
Close it.
Yeah, thank you, Joachim. How does it look like from German perspective? Oh, I cannot hear you.
Sorry about this again. So from the German perspective, we are always good in analyzing the situation, but we don't have the right solutions, I think. First of all, the Germans are always afraid that all the refugees want to come to Germany, even from the Polish-Belarus borderline, or from the Near East, or from Africa. So if you analyze the situation correctly, there are not only 82 million refugees because of the climate change and the economic situation. We have also a very high pressure of development in Africa. Like Nigeria has 400 million inhabitants. In one generation, we will double the population to 800 million. And the average age in Germany is almost 50 years of the people. In Yemen, it's 15 years. In Nigeria, is 20 years. So we have a high population pressure on Europe. Europe is growing older and older. In Africa, the population goes up from 1 billion to 2 billion in more or less one generation, where we have to find a solution. But we think always we can solve the situation if we offer technical solutions, like if we produce more food, or if we keep the people outside, then we can solve the problems. But I think this is not the end of the discussion, because first of all, I think we have to change our attitude. This means that we have to give up from our welfare to develop Africa, especially our neighbor countries, Northern Africa, the Near East, the Ukraine. So we have to invest there and have to give up. The people who are there, they are not only starving because they don't have enough to eat. They want also to have work to earn money to save their lives. So we have to build up their working places and give them a chance to develop themselves. Despite the way, there's a book from Douglas. He wrote about arrival cities, and he says most of the refugees are staying in the regions. They are going from the countryside into the cities. So what's going on? We get these mega cities, and these mega cities is a kind of perspective for the people who are coming there to come into the center of the mega cities. And he speaks about the slums of the cities and votes for them, and say we have to build to leave these slums or these minior cities around our cities, that the people get the chance to enter the high life standard of our big cities. Well, there's one truth behind it. People want to be part of society, and if they come to Germany, we want to be part of our society. We want also put their interest and put their abilities in our society to get a better life. And we have to serve, or we have to make all tensions or all efforts. We have to make all efforts to improve their life at their places where they live. And I think it's not enough to think about technological solutions. We have also discussed it in our societies, what we are willing to give up. If we look at our societies and look at our elder generation, we lived in a much more simple way when we are doing it. We live in such a high standard now that we have, but I'm a little bit afraid that the younger generations, like our generation, our children, don't know what it means to give up and not to fulfill all wishes which we have. So I think we have to do both. We have to discuss in our societies, what is justice? What does global justice mean? How much do we need? And what can we do technologically with our educational system, with our economical system to help these societies around Europe?
Thank you very much. Dear guests, dear friends, I have so many questions now. I'm afraid we will need to organize another debate. But I'm getting signs that we should be getting to a close of this debate. So let me ask just last question. I'm very sorry for that, because I really think that we should be. There are so many areas that we should go deeper into. I remember the meeting a few years ago with Dalai Lama that I went to. It was nearby, and there was in the church, there were representatives of different religions, and everybody was praying for the peace. And then there was the time for Dalai Lama, and he said something like that: don't pray for peace. It does not make any sense. Do peace. Work to create peace on the earth. And I think I liked it. I'm not sure if I would exclude the praying aspect, but I think doing peace is really what is more important. So here is my question to you, the last one, maybe a little bit naive, but I have to ask it. What can you or what can we do in our areas to make this world a little bit better? What can we do? And Edgardo, what do you think? I mean, your American perspective is very important to me.
We want to do something, but the question of the end, the goal, the purpose is in some sense the first question. And so for me, it begins with dreaming, daring to dream. It's so hard to dream these days because there's so much room for cynicism and for giving up and for the horizons closing in on us. An unjust world with no borders is very possible. A just world with no borders is a dream. And I think that then what I would encourage is to listen and learn from the dreams of also the people who are around us, and to seek together to build a path for a better future by learning to dream together and not seeing the person next to me or the other group as a nightmare, but really as the one with whom we need to build dreams for this world to be a world that is more peaceful.
Thank you very much. Leszek, what would you say?
I would say, I believe that all human beings, or a vast majority of human beings, as we all have the same basic needs. We would like to live in peace and relative prosperity. We don't want to fight against the others. We would like to our homes and towns and cities to be safe. We need this safety, and we have to teach the others that we share this common, regardless of the origin or whatever background. There is this basic common spark of humanity in all of us, and we have to see it in each other's eyes, and we have to see it through this misinformation and lies that we are being fed all over, because this education that we have to undertake now is a huge challenge, because we have all the possible knowledge of the humanity at the end of our fingertips in our mobile phones. But at the same time, the all manipulation and lies and misinformation is also there. And on this really basic level, we have to show the young people whenever somebody tries to manipulate them for their own like evil goals. So there is enough of knowledge, there is enough of wisdom around us, so it's easy to reach out for that. But we have to help people to see through it more clearly, and that's the big challenge right now.
Thank you very much. Joachim.
Leszek, you are right. This is not a question of knowledge, but more a question of understanding. And sometimes I doubt that we understand what we should do. And I would say at the beginning, we have to make a distinction, what are our tasks from the individual point of view, from our ethical understanding of our own doing, and what are the tasks of the state and of the structural political level. And we are always in the discussion mix up with both levels. We always discuss about the big questions, how we should come along with China, and what should we do in Africa and in the United States. But what we don't see is our neighbor who suffers, who come into our society, who is maybe a refugee or who is looking for work. And I ask myself, are we emphatic enough to see the needs of our neighbor countries? Do we build enough bridges to our neighborhood, into our neighbor countries? And do we work together and build up a common, now I would say a peaceful European society? And there I have my doubts that this we are doing strongly enough. So I think one should do what one can do. And normally people would always quote the American President Kennedy. He always said, don't ask what the country can do for you, ask what you can do for the country. So I would say, what can we do for our neighbors? And that if we are doing it together, we build up a federal understanding of society, and when we influence politics too. So what I would wish is that we would connect each other in this way as we are doing it now, and that we come to a doing, that we force our neighborhood, our people who are surround us, to invest their time, to invest their money, to invest their engagement for this kind of networking and influencing politics. Then I would think we can change society. I believe that every consumer can change the economics because of his behavior. And if we look at the younger generation, something we can learn too. If we look at how much meat the younger generation is eating comparing to our generation, then they have the feeling that we really change something. So every supermarket is now providing vegetarian and other food stuff as alternatives comparing to eating meat. And if we would do it in our way to build bridges in a humanitarian society, then I think we have a chance to change the world. And we need, as Europeans, a common project. And one of these common projects is to build bridges to our neighbor countries like Northern Africa, Near East, and the more eastern countries from Germany.
Thank you very much. I think there's a beautiful conclusion of our conversation, at least this part of our conversation. I think this idea of dreaming together, I think this is something that is very close to my philosophical mind. Then, just using the knowledge that we have, really, it's amazing. Really, we have so much at hand, and we can use it somehow. Sometimes we don't use it. And then what Joachim said, really helping the other person that is close by. It's wonderful. And yeah, you're right. Really looking at the younger generation, amazing how much we can learn from them. You know, the whole meat consumption, much less. And the fact, I don't know, at least in, as I see the younger people, how many of them buy their clothes in second-hand clothes, and how much, effective they tend to be, at times at least. So thank you very much. It was wonderful talking to you, listening to you, well, your ideas will stay with me for a long time. I think it was also great for Tosia to be able to hear your perspective. It's important for them. And I think now I will hand let's say the microphone, the floor, to Tomasz Konieczny. He probably wants to say something at the end of our conversation.
Yeah, thank you, Wojtek. Thank you for very interesting answers. Hope that they will become an impulse to reflect on our world for all of us. There were questions in the chat. Actually, there's been a lot of going there, but I have the impression that most of them have already been answered during the meeting. So let me conclude by saying that we can see that the current problems above all with migrants are the ones that most concern us. I think it is clear that there's no future for us if we do not solve the current problems as they arise. So I must add that many issues were not raised, as Wojtek said. There were no mentions about the China policy, the shifting of the world power in the modern world, all the problems which are experiencing in the semiconductor market, for example, which raises the questions of the limits of technological development and the future of green transformation. And I think this is an excellent excuse to return to those questions and to invite our guests to another meeting. I hope that you will all agree with me that we need such meetings. Many thanks to our guests, Edgardo, Joachim, Leszek. Thank you, Wojtek, for moderating. Special thanks goes to Tosia. You did great. I also would like to thank the interpreters, Anna and Katarzyna, who provided the interpretation of the meeting into Polish. For those who could not be with us from the beginning, I would like to remind that the recording is available on the Facebook of the Krzyżowa Foundation. And for the ending part, I wish us all the best, like more bridges than borders. And good night, good luck, or for the ones in America, have a great day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.